The JVS Show.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
So on the 27th of June, a political group called Britain First will be marching through Luton, apparently. They're going to start at the train station. They'll finish in the town centre, where the leader of the group, the former communications officer for the BNP, Paul Golding, will then give a speech. The deputy leader will also speak. She's called Jayda Fransen, and she joins me now. Good morning to you, Jayda.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Why are you coming to Luton?
We're coming to Luton not only because of the issues that we take regarding Islamic extremism in the area, but because the locals have reached out to us and asked us to give their support.
I was going to say, because you're not from Luton, are you?
I'm not personally, no.
Have you got many members that are from Luton?
We do. Obviously, I can't divulge our membership, location, but we do have quite a few supporters and members in Luton, which has been evident when we posted this event. The response has been brilliant so far. So
you say that people in Luton have kind of asked you to come. What are they hoping you'll do?
Well, look, it's no secret to anybody that Luton is a hotbed for Islamic extremists. We've all seen processions, marches from these Islamic extremists throughout the streets of Luton, and the people of Luton have had enough. They don't want this. This isn't an Islamic area. This is a British town. It always will be, and they want us to go to the area and give them our support. There are mosques everywhere. There are extremists wandering the streets, untouchable, and they've had enough, and so have we.
But aren't you harping back to a small handful of, frankly, fruitcakes who a few years ago indeed upset everybody by protesting when the soldiers marched through Luton and then went on a bit of a walkthrough? I mean, they're a small bunch of nutters. They're not representative of people in Luton.
What do you mean they're not representative of, say, other Muslims in Luton?
I work in Luton. That the impression that you're painting is that Luton is, constantly having all these Muslims marching through the town centre, protesting about the way of life in this country. It's just not the case. It's not my experience, and I'm here in Luton every day. You're not.
They don't need to protest, Jonathan. They don't need to protest to show that they have absolutely no intentions of integrating into British society. You only have to travel through...
Sorry, who is they? They don't have any intention of integrating in Britain.
We were just talking about the Muslim community, weren't we? Were we not? In fact, you were talking about...
Yeah, but what experience have you got of the Muslim community in Luton when you don't live in Luton? You don't come to Luton. You have no idea how many Muslims in Luton integrate.
Jonathan, is this the opinion that everyone should take across the UK, that if there's an issue in the UK but it's not in our area, we won't give it any attention? Should I have done that with the children in Rotherham who were raped by grooming gangs, Muslim grooming gangs? Should I have said, I don't live there, so I'll leave that be? Or the mosque that was just planned for Dudley and we held a march there? Should we have said to the people of Dudley, we won't give you our support because, quite frankly, we don't live there, so
no, but you have to know what you're talking about, and you have to know what you're actually protesting against.
We do know what we're protesting against. We're protesting against the Islamification of a British town. If you go to Luton, it doesn't resemble an old British town that it should do.
Why not?
That's why we're going.
Why not? Because lots of Muslims live here?
Because the Muslim community have been given free rein by the government to form ghettos throughout the UK, Muslim ghettos, where non-Muslims feel like they're not welcome. And we've seen it, Jonathan. It's no secret.
Give me an example of a ghetto where non-Muslims are made not to feel welcome.
I personally have been told that I am not allowed to walk through Tower Hamlets because I'm a non-Muslim.
In Luton.
But Luton itself is full of Muslims. That's the point.
Yeah, but you've just said that there are parts of Luton that have become ghettos where non-Muslims cannot walk. I'm asking you to tell me where in Luton.
Okay, we've all seen the footage of some pretty high-profile non-Muslims who have been filming documentaries and have been attacked by Muslims because they've opposed Islamic extremism, they've opposed Islamic culture.
Sorry,
Tommy Robinson being one of them.
You're going to have to give us some examples of where... I'm not a Muslim. Tell me where in Luton I can't walk.
It's not that you can't walk through Luton, Jonathan. I'm sure that you would absolutely fit in, given that you appease these people.
It's not a matter of appeasing people. You just said there are parts of Luton where non-Muslims cannot walk. I'm asking you to tell me where I can't as a non-Muslim walk.
Okay, you as a non-Muslim would be fine because you appease Muslims. But the community of Luton that are reaching out to us are those who don't want 20-odd mosques on their doorstep. They don't want to walk down the streets and have hordes of Muslims piling out of mosques at them. This is a British town. Why should it be taken over by a Muslim community? I'm
quite sure, as with anything, if you get a reputation for being a nasty racist, then of course if you walk through an area that is predominantly Muslim and everybody knows that you're a nasty little racist, then the chances are...
who are you talking about? Who's a nasty little racist?
I'm giving you a scenario here because you're saying that I would be okay because I appease Muslims. I'm saying it may be the only people that would have any kind of issue are people who have a reputation of being a nasty racist.
Well, let's start with the word racist, Jonathan. What race are Muslims? Please tell me, what race are Muslims? Opposing an ideology that condones paedophilia, encourages jihad, incites hatred towards non-Muslims, that is not racist. That's common sense. And furthermore, being a Muslim, you can be white, you can be black, you can be Asian. It doesn't matter. It's not a race. So let's drop the racist line for once, and let's have a normal conversation.
But you're saying that You said. Let me just go back to the point that you made. You said that one of the reasons why you are going to protest in Luton is that there are parts of Luton that the government has allowed to become ghettos, and parts of Luton where non-Muslims would feel afraid of walking. I've asked you to tell me where in Luton non-Muslims would feel afraid, and you can't tell me. Non-Muslims have contacted us to say, please come to Luton. We have Islamic extremists in our town. We have, tens of mosques everywhere you look. There is a woman in a burqa. What do you not understand? Is that not the formation of a Muslim ghetto? If you go to other parts of the UK, you don't have that. But where there are hordes of Muslims, there are lots of mosques. But what is the problem? Jayda, what is the problem if a woman happens to walk through a town centre wearing a burqa? What is the problem?
How do you know that that's a woman, Jonathan? How do you know what's beneath that burqa?
Right. So you'd want to ban burqas, you want to ban niqabs as well?
On record, I would like to say that Britain First, as a movement, support banning the burqa entirely.
Right. But we live in a free country where people are free to express their religion. Now, if somebody just happens to live and work in Luton, if somebody happens to be a Muslim, if somebody, for whatever their religious beliefs, wants to wear a burqa, why are you in a way suggesting that those people are synonymous with extremists and that you need to come and protest about their very existence in this town?
I'll explain that. Because there is absolutely no difference. There is no difference in the Quran, in the Hadith, in the Islamic scriptures that these so-called moderate Muslims are reading and these extremists are reading. There is no difference. If you open the Quran, the most talked about subject in that Quran is jihad. The Quran itself encourages Muslims to engage in jihad. Allah encourages that. In fact, Allah goes as far as saying that Muslims that don't engage in jihad are not true Muslims, and they're letting down their faith. Allah prefers those Muslims.
But what are you suggesting then? Are you suggesting all Muslims are on the path to being extremists?
What I'm suggesting is that if you read from the same book, even if you don't go and commit those acts, if you condone that behaviour, if you support that ideology, the ideology where a prophet that they consider to be the perfect human married a 6-year-old and had sex with that child when she was 9 years of age, that's condoning paedophilia, and that's why we have grooming gangs across the UK, and they are targeting non-Muslim children. That's what's going on, Jonathan. That's the reality, and we've all seen it. It's time to stop pretending that there are lots of moderates and a handful of extremists.
But Jayda, let me just paint you this picture. There will be lots of Muslims listening to you speaking now who live here, not only in Luton, but throughout Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire. Muslims who have jobs, who have families, who love this country, who love living in this country, who are just a part of our country. They surely will be very hurt, and they will be frightened and concerned by your presence in Luton. Now, do you really want to hurt and upset and frighten those people who are just going about their business and happen to be a Muslim?
Why would they be frightened? They have no reason to be frightened. We have shown from our previous events that we are not violent. We have a very strict code of conduct. We have a very stringent security team who will not accept any ill behaviour. We don't allow alcohol at any of our events. You know, we're very, very organised and disciplined. So we're not going there to upset anyone. We're not going there to hurt anyone. But whilst we're on the subject of people being upset and hurt, I find it quite hurtful that these so-called moderate Muslims who are going about their lives and love living in this country are going to a mosque and listening to scriptures that say that as a non-Muslim, as the kuffar, I should be beheaded. I find that quite hurtful.
You say that there's no reason for people to be frightened. I mean, maybe a good comparison for you is a tiger on a lead in a town centre. It may well be safe, but people nearby will still know that if that tiger was off the leash, it could cause damage. And isn't that the very point, that people in Luton, just by your presence on that particular day, people will feel uneasy?
Well, it didn't stop the extremists going onto the streets and heckling at returning soldiers.
Yes, but you're going back years. When has that happened since?
That doesn't matter.
But it does matter because it does matter because you're painting this picture that, you know, that every time, any opportunity, there's all these Muslims doing this. You're talking about a small handful of people who were, frankly, off their rocker, going back years. This is not representative of Luton, and many people in Luton are fed up, absolutely fed up of this constant impression being created by groups like yours that Luton in some way is a hotbed of terrorism and that everybody should be fearful of every Muslim in Luton. It's not fair.
Should I tell you, those people that you're describing as, what did you say they are? How did you describe those extremists? Just remind me.
What, fruitcakes, nutcases, anything like that? Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what they were doing? They were doing what the Quran tells them to do. They were doing what the Hadith tell them to do. Okay, they were being, in their eyes, they were being, and in accordance with the Islamic scriptures, which I have studied, they were being good Muslims. The Muslims that go about their day-to-day lives and don't engage in those kind of activities, according to the Quran and according to Allah, are bad Muslims.
How many mosques do you think there are in Luton?
As I understand, there are over 19. I think there are a few more.
No, there are 5. There are 5 mosques.
Really?
So you create this impression that from the airport to the M1 is just, you know, a sea of mosques and Muslims wearing burqas. It's just not representative. You've not got your facts right.
Why are you so hell-bent on appeasing these people?
I'm not about appeasing. I'm about being fair, Jayda. I'm about being fair.
Do you think they're being fair to you when they're sitting in a mosque reading scriptures that say, because you're a non-Muslim, you deserve to die? Do you think that's fair? Wake up, Jonathan. The rest of the UK are slowly waking up.
Jayda, there are lots and lots of Muslims who will be listening to my programme. I have friends who are Muslims who by no means want me or anybody else who happens to be a non-Muslim to be killed, for goodness sake. You're taking...
Well, have them come onto your show and condemn the scriptures within the Quran that state that non-Muslims should be beheaded. Have them come on the show and do that.
The reality is, as with all of these various religious books, there are always some people that take these things to extremes. It's the same with Christianity, isn't it? You get some people who hark back to the Old Testament and they will pick out little paragraphs from the Old Testament and they'll use it to judge and bash other people with. There's always some people who have to take these things so literally that they can't live in the modern world. But those people are just that. They're extreme and weird. Most people who follow a religion are just sensible people who use it to enhance their life rather than be nasty with it.
Well, that's your opinion. But look, you can bring up the Old Testament. I mean, we're a Christian movement. The Old Testament, people do tend to rely on that. You're correct. People do tend to cherry pick from the Old Testament to try and argue against Islamic extremism. But the New Testament, repeals that and Jesus' Sermon on the Mount quite clearly states how one should conduct themselves. There's been no reform of Islam at all, and there never will be. They said absolutely not. They're not interested. They don't want to reform. They want to establish, a caliphate, an Islamic state. And even recently, we've seen documentaries of these Islamic female groups that are gathering in Luton, and they are planning for when Luton and the UK becomes an Islamic state. This is happening.
But you're scaremongering, Jayda. I mean, surely, if you genuinely want Islam to reform, why don't you sit down calmly at a table with Islamic scholars and leaders and discuss your concerns? Why do you think protesting through a town like Luton will have a positive effect?
Because Islamic leaders, Islamic scholars, Muslims in general are not interested in the opinions of the kuffar. They are not interested in the opinions of non-Muslims. Anything that is not Islamic doesn't concern them. That's why they want their own law. They want Sharia law in the UK, because they don't acknowledge man-made law. They don't acknowledge UK British law. That's why we have grooming gangs across the UK. They are rife everywhere you turn. So you can't sit and have a debate with these people. If they do ever indicate that they don't agree with certain scriptures, they are just engaging in taqiyya, which is the art of lying to further Islam.
Again, that's not my experience. I mean, it may well be that they may not be interested in the views of great big burly blokes who come to their town centres and protest and shout and paint their faces and things like that. But if you sit down and have a sensible conversation with people, generally, no matter what religion they are, they're open to hearing what you have to say.
So you're suggesting then if we sat down and had a cup of tea, we could discuss a reform of Islam in the UK? If we didn't protest...
I would suggest it's probably more effective than coming to Luton, shouting in the town centre, frightening some people, whipping up some support from others who are disenfranchised for whatever reason, and then getting back on the train and going back to wherever you've kind of travelled from.
Yeah, well, coming to Luton and standing in the town centre with hundreds of other British patriots who are going to travel the country to stand with us shows the people of Luton that they have our support. So us sitting around a table with some Muslims who aren't even going to take on board what we're saying isn't going to help them. It's not going to show them that we're here for you. When they reach out to us and say, can you come to Luton because I have an extremist living down the road from me, if I reply to them and say, no, we're not going to do that because it's upsetting the people of Luton. But what we will do is we will sit round a table with some Muslims and be ignored. The people of Luton have asked us to go to Luton. This is what. So
tell me, Jayda, what are you going to say then when you come to Luton? When you get off the train, when you get off the train at Luton train station, and what will you be shouting or what will be written on your placards?
Well, We don't necessarily carry placards to get our message.
What message are you going to write?
The town centre, and then I will
shouting
deliver a
what?
speech. But I'm not going to deliver a speech now because, quite frankly, I haven't even thought of one yet. But usually I just do them off the cuff. But there will be speeches given at that point.
But what's the general message that you're going to be, chanting or shouting through the streets of Luton?
The general message is that we don't want any hate preachers on the streets of Luton or across the UK. We don't want any more mosques being built across the UK. We don't want people walking around in burqas.
Let me just...
Sorry. You just asked a question. I'll just finish.
I'm interested in picking
grooming gangs across the UK.
Yeah, but I'm interested in picking up on that because if you say we don't want any extremist preachers who are going to be preaching hate, then, so say all of us. Jayda, of course, I don't think anybody sensible wants hate preachers preaching. That's a perfectly reasonable thing. The government have said they don't want any hate preachers. But
the government say a lot of things, Jonathan.
But then from that, you then go to say, we don't want any mosques.
No, we don't want... I've just explained to you that these Muslims are... Whether you are actually engaging in these acts and these atrocities, or whether you are just going to mosque, listening to the scriptures and saying, good on the guys that are doing it, but I think I'll stick with my 9 to 5. It doesn't matter.
So are you ultimately saying then that what you don't want is Islam in this country, full stop?
Absolutely. We don't want Islam in this country.
So you don't want any Muslims in this country?
No, I didn't say I don't want Muslims. Islam is a barbaric ideology. It has no place in the UK at all.
So you don't mind Muslims, but you just don't want them being able to practice their religion?
Muslims are children of God, and hopefully they can find Jesus and see that they're going down the wrong path.
So you want all Muslims to convert to Christianity?
Well, I'd at least like them to embrace the fact that they're in a Christian country and not try and form ghettos where non-Muslims don't feel they can live anymore because they're so, people feel intimidated by groups of women or men, whatever's underneath those burqas. They feel intimidated by it. Little old ladies who have lived in Luton for 50, 60 years don't want to be walking down the road getting their shopping with hordes of Muslims coming at them under burqas. They don't know who's under there. This is Britain. We don't want this. If you don't want to integrate, when in Rome, this is what we say. So if you don't want to integrate, go to an Islamic state. Go to an Islamic country.
But surely we have always been a country that has welcomed people of different faiths from all over the world and has welcomed their ability to practice their faith in this country. Why do you...
Absolutely.
Because Jayda, the thing that is so interesting to me is that on one hand you will say something that is really common sense and very sensible, and I can hear my listeners, nodding their heads in agreement at home. We don't want hate preachers in Luton. Absolutely. Of course we don't want hate preachers in Luton. All these people who preach hatred should clear off if they don't like living in this country. If they want to preach hatred, clear off. Go elsewhere. We all agree with that. But then from there you say, well, actually, we don't want any Muslim in this country to be able to practice their faith. We want them to convert to Christianity. I mean, it's...
No, we didn't. I didn't say I want them to convert to Christianity.
You said you don't want them to be able to be a practicing Muslim.
I said to you that I don't have a problem with Muslims. They are children of God. I don't have a problem with any person.
But you have a problem with them practicing their religion.
I have a problem with their barbaric ideology. Now, let me just explain to you. You said that we are a country that embraces others and their right to practice their religion. We have officials, our commanding officer for our London unit is Jewish. We have officials within our organisation that are from ethnic minorities. We have lots of Sikh members. We have lots of Hindu members. And quite frankly, they are wonderful. And yes, we absolutely respect and embrace their right for them to practice their religion, their peaceful religion. The problem is that Muslims and Islam, it isn't peaceful. It is a barbaric ideology. It is backwards. It condones paedophilia. It encourages jihad. It incites hatred towards non-Muslims.
Jayda,
it doesn't recognise man-made law.
Just one final quick question for you, because we've got to go to the news headlines. But our local police in Bedfordshire say they don't have enough money to be able to police the county properly. They haven't. They literally are on their knees when it comes to money. And yet, when you turn up in June, the police are going to have to, in order to make sure that they can police Luton effectively, they're going to have to put all their resources into the town. It's going to cost thousands and thousands of pounds. Those thousands of pounds will now mean that they cannot pay, for example, for PCSOs in certain parts of the county for the rest of the year, all because you're coming to Luton to protest. Do you really feel it's worth it?
It's our democratic right to protest.
But you're going to cost my listeners. You're going to cost my listeners a fortune on that day, and for what?
Well, have you ever seen any of our previous events needing policing? We have our own.
It's irrelevant. The police will still have to be there.
I tell you why the police need to be there, because of the left-wing liberal opposition who are appeasing these Muslims, and because of the Muslims that will turn out against us. It will not be to police our people. It will be to police those who turn up and try and stop us from exercising our democratic right to protest.
Jayda, thank you very much indeed. There's the Deputy Leader of Britain First, Jayda Fransen. Well, I'm genuinely interested to get your response to what she said. Do you think the anti-Islam protest should be allowed in Luton? Do you think she is representing the views of people in Luton? She says she is. Do you agree with that? 08459 455 555. I'd love to hear your response.